We saw this message come through, and I ended up processing it, and we noticed the subject line on it was Alaskan Black Pyramid. The message itself was destined for at least 10 or 15 different commanders within our vicinity of different units. We all read the message, and it pretty much gave longitude and latitude of where this Alaskan Black Pyramid was.
In September 1989, Doug Muchler began his assignment as a counterintelligence officer at Fort Richardson near Anchorage, Alaska. His role involved investigating espionage and terrorism, so he started familiarizing himself with the region. Coming from Ohio, Doug had a lot to learn about Alaska's rugged terrain and wilderness. Alaska is vast, covering nearly 700,000 square miles, twice the size of Texas. Doug laid out several maps on a large table and examined them, noting the mountains, rivers, lakes, cities, and old mining towns. However, one detail stood out. A small area on a map of Denali National Park was whited out. Using a magnifying glass, Doug saw a note saying, "This area not surveyed to date," located about 60 miles west of Mount McKinley. Doug found this puzzling. Alaska had been thoroughly surveyed, so why was there an unsurveyed area? He set the question aside, believing that if it was important, he would learn about it eventually. Nonetheless, the location intrigued him, and 3 years later, he would discover why.
That story about the underground pyramid is real. We ran it during last night's 6 o'clock broadcast. A few hours later, a couple of scary guys in suits came by the station and grilled my boss in his own office. Next thing I know, the story is pulled from the 11 o'clock lineup, and all the tapes of the story were confiscated. It's all gone.
By late 1992, Doug was with a group of off-duty soldiers when the local news reported an underground nuclear explosion in China. The blast was so powerful, it sent shockwaves to Alaska. What caught Doug's attention was a subsequent seismologist report showing a large object about 100 feet below the surface in central Alaska. A pyramid larger than the Great Pyramid of Giza, measuring 550 feet tall. Doug noticed the pyramid was in the area marked "This area is not surveyed to date." He rushed to the map room to confirm and then set his VCR to record the 11 o'clock news for verification. When the news aired, the pyramid was not mentioned. Doug checked with news junkies and found no one had heard about it. The following day, Doug visited the local news station with his military credentials. The station manager denied any knowledge of the story. Doug was confused, especially since many soldiers had seen the report. The manager's odd behavior made Doug suspect a cover-up. A younger employee at the station discreetly informed Doug that the story was indeed true. The employee explained that after the 6 o'clock broadcast, agents had visited the station, interrogated the boss, and seized all related footage. The official reason for killing the story was national security related to the Chinese nuclear test. Doug was frustrated, but chose not to pursue the issue further with his superiors.
I was mad. I went back to the office in formation that night. I told everybody what I'd found out, and the guys in the unit were like, "Wait a minute, we watched it. What do you mean they didn't run it?" The same thing I was saying.
A year later, he was transferred to Fort Meade in Maryland, home to the NSA, providing a new opportunity. Doug, now at Fort Meade, where vast archives of top-secret files were stored, inquired about records on Alaskan archaeological sites. The archivist directed him to the relevant files, but before he could investigate, 2 agents arrived, warning him to leave. They insisted that he should not interfere with the subject, hinting at a deeper secret. Doug returned to his duties, but later went public with his findings. It turned out that the pyramid was real, and the military was aware of its location and purpose, as they were the ones operating it. Marty Johnson shook his head and chuckled softly. As a Navy engineer during World War II, he'd worked on numerous top-secret projects, but this one was different. He had been flown from Omaha, Nebraska to Unalakleet, Alaska, a place he'd never heard of, then transported on a white bus with blacked-out windows. The bus was filled with other engineers and technicians, all of whom were equally in the dark about their destination and purpose. Despite the mystery, Marty was thrilled. While others seemed anxious, he couldn't help but feel like he was part of an exciting spy story. After the war, Marty joined Western Electric Manufacturing, which later became Bell Labs, a half-owned subsidiary of AT&T. The offer to work on classified military projects was irresistible. His expertise was electrical engineering, but Marty had a knack for building and fixing anything. The challenges of working with cutting-edge technology like transistors excited him. He marveled at how these tiny devices had revolutionized electronics, speculating whether their development might even have involved extraterrestrial influences. By 1959, Marty felt he was on the brink of shaping the future. Though he couldn't reveal details to his family, they understood the importance of his work. After a 6-hour bumpy ride, the bus finally halted. When the doors opened, the frigid Alaskan air hit them like a wall. The stark white landscapes was blinding after hours in the dark. He adjusted his collar, squinted against the glare, and followed his colleagues to what happened to be a concrete shed in the middle of nowhere. The cold wind made the situation less enjoyable. They all shuffled into the shed, and the officers followed, closing the door behind them. A collective sigh of relief was heard as they escaped the biting wind. An officer instructed everyone to grab a rail and hold on. He pulled a metal gate across the door and pressed a button. The platform jolted as it began to descend. Marty realized that the shed was merely an entrance to an elevator shaft. As they descended, the temperature warmed slightly, though it was still cold enough to see their breath. After what seemed like a long descent, the elevator finally stopped. The officer opened the gate and signaled for everyone to exit. Marty followed into a hallway that resembled every other military office building that he had seen. Gray concrete floors, green beige walls, and the constant hum of fluorescent lights. They moved through a series of doors numbered but otherwise unmarked, clean, simple, and functional, as expected in a military setting. The facility seemed much larger than the surface structure suggested. The officer raised his voice to be heard over the murmurs of anticipation. Before starting their 4-week orientation, they'd get a chance to see the project. Marty's impatience was shared by the rest of the group. After navigating a few turns, they arrived at a massive steel door, standing 15 feet tall and wide enough for a car to pass through. The officer picked up a red phone receiver from the wall and spoke into it. Marty couldn't hear the conversation but amused himself with the thought of the officer saying, "Open sesame." Metal clanked somewhere and the door began to slowly open. The door was not only enormous, but also a foot thick. Marty wondered what kind of project required such security. His mind raced through possibilities. Nuclear weapons? He hoped not. As they stepped through the door, they entered a vast cavern. Marty's eyes adjusted to the dim light, and the enormity of the space became clear. The secrecy, the security measures, all of it made sense now. The officer announced with pride, "Gentlemen, welcome to the Dark Pyramid." In the spring of 1978, Lee Peon was at Unlakit Airport reminiscing with a fellow veteran. Lee had retired and become a teacher, but his friend, a still active helicopter pilot, offered him a taste of the old excitement. The pilot was making a quick trip into the mysterious Alaskan Triangle to deliver important equipment to a secret base near Denali, also known as Mount McKinley. "Lee, I've got something that will get your blood pumping. We're heading to a base near Denali. It's a quick job, just 4 hours. You want to come along?" Lee eagerly accepted. They boarded the helicopter and flew east. After almost 2 hours, the pilot warned, "We're about 5 miles out. Things are going to get strange. Our instruments will go crazy and you'll hear alarms. Don't worry, we'll switch to VFR, visual flight rules, for the rest of the journey. Just keep the ground in sight and watch for obstacles." As the helicopter approached, the electronics malfunctioned. The radar screen went dark and the compass needle spun uncontrollably. Lee's anxiety grew as all the helicopter's power cut out. The instruments, the lights, everything, leaving them in darkness. Yet the helicopter continued to fly smoothly. Moments later, it landed safely. Within seconds of landing, a ground crew was already refueling the helicopter, engine running and rotor spinning. Lee surveyed the area. Small guardhouses with towers, a few Quonset huts, and stacks of equipment boxes scattered around. Razor wire lined the perimeter and a C-130 circled overhead. 6 men in black uniforms without any insignia were unloading crates of cargo. Lee noticed their heavy arms trained on the helicopter and nearby jeep with a loaded .50 caliber machine gun aimed directly at them. He glanced at the pilot, who gave him a reassuring nod, indicating that this was standard procedure. In about 3 or 4 minutes, they were back in the air, heading west to the airport. As they cleared the area, the helicopter's instruments flickered back to life, functioning perfectly. Lee turned to the pilot and asked, "What the hell was that?" The pilot, tapping his headset and making a shushing gesture, replied, "Yeah, they'd be listening to the radio." At a small bar near the airport, Lee, the pilot, and another man sat at a secluded table. A waitress delivered their beers, and Lee took a sip before asking, "Okay, let's hear it. That place is more secret than the Manhattan Project." The other man began, "Nobody's supposed to know it even exists. Deep underground, there's a giant pyramid made of black stone, or at least they think it's stone. It's been there for thousands of years. Since the 1950s, TCH and engineers have been working on it. They believe it's a power generator of some kind." Lee was skeptical. A pyramid is a power plant? That sounds like science fiction. How much power does it generate? The pilot answered, "Enough to power the whole country." The idea of a pyramid functioning as a power generator seemed fantastical, but if constructed with the right materials, it might be theoretically possible. The implications were staggering, and Lee wondered just what other secrets lay buried within that mysterious underground pyramid. Marty Johnson provided detailed information about the pyramid. It stood 550 feet tall, with its base 700 feet below the surface. The pyramid's angles were 48 degrees, not the usual 45 degrees. Marty emphasized the importance of these specifics, though the reason was unclear. Enclosed control rooms at each corner monitored the energy flowing through the pyramid. The project's aim was energy distribution, but whether it would ever work as intended remained uncertain. Marty's son revealed that his father had constructed an aluminum replica of the pyramid. When a small amount of voltage was applied, the replica magnified the energy, producing enough electricity to power their house and farm. This led to theories that pyramids in Alaska, Egypt, Indonesia, and elsewhere formed an ancient energy grid, tapping into a Z-point field to transmit energy globally, or even throughout the solar system. When Doug Muchler went public with the story, he chose Linda Moulton Howe as his platform. Linda, a veteran investigative journalist known for her work on UFOs, aliens, and conspiracies, has won an Emmy for her documentaries and is highly respected in the field. She does thorough research, so when Doug contacted her, she requested copies of his ID, addresses, phone numbers, and importantly, his DD-214. The DD Form 214 is a military document detailing a service member's history, including assignments, rank, education, and medals. Doug provided the document proving his claims. After Linda reported on the pyramid, others began sharing their own experiences. Marty Johnson and Lee Pearson's stories came from their sons, who had heard from them firsthand. Linda also heard from a retired naval captain stationed in Alaska. The captain observed communication failures with aircraft flying over a specific area east of Unalaska and west of Mount Denali, where radar detected significant electromagnetic energy. He suspected the pyramid could be involved, so he reported it to his superior. Soon after, he was ordered to remain silent or face a court-martial. Lee Pearson's son, Bruce, believed that his father's story and thought that he had enough information to locate the Dark Pyramid. Bruce traveled to Alaska, hired a plane, and searched the area east of Unalaska and west of Mount Denali. After nearly 2 hours of flying, they found a patch of land with unusual squared-off features, right angles and straight lines, unlike natural formations. Upon further investigation, they discovered an old road and an airstrip not shown on any maps. This suggests that at some point the area was used for something significant, with the nearest marked road being nearly 100 miles away. This area is close to the coordinates provided to Linda Moulton Howe by another retired Navy officer. Using Google Earth, some people claim to see an outline of a former compound or structure at these coordinates. One man, Nathan Campbell, even hiked to the coordinates to investigate firsthand. In May 2020, Nathan hired a plane to fly him to Carey Lake in Denali National Park, near the pyramid's alleged location, and planned to be picked up 4 months later. Nathan was well prepared with good gear, ample food, and satellite communication for updates. However, he stopped checking in after a few weeks. A search team later found his campsite intact, but no sign of Nathan. His diary's last entry read, "Went to get water." Nathan's disappearance remains a mystery. Some speculate that he may have discovered the Dark Pyramid and was eliminated. It's worth noting that this location falls within the Alaskan Triangle. For 20 years, the CIA ran Project Stargate, which focused on remote viewing, a technique for projecting one's consciousness to any location on Earth. One of the most skilled remote viewers, Pat Price, reported seeing an underground base hidden inside Mount Hayes, located in the Alaska Triangle. According to Pat, the base was operated by both humans and aliens working together. Linda Moulton Howe found a witness who remote viewed the Dark Pyramid. The witness described a small building with an elevator going hundreds of feet down, leading to a military facility. Inside, they saw a lab and eventually came upon the Dark Pyramid. The area was busy with equipment, lights, and personnel. The witness explored further and found hallways, tunnels, offices, and sleeping areas, and a kitchen. At one point, the witness was part of a tour led by a non-human guide. The true purpose of the Dark Pyramid was revealed. It serves as an energy device and a charging station for UFOs. There have been over 6,500 UFO sightings in the Alaskan Triangle, making it one of the most active UFO hotspots in the world. This high level of activity might be linked to the pyramid, which reportedly supplies energy to these aircraft. The theory suggests that the military's failure to operate the pyramid successfully is due to the fact that it's controlled by extraterrestrials. Douglas Muchler, a former military intelligence officer, is one of the key witnesses. Supporters of the story consider him credible, as he was provided documents to verify his identity. Notable figures like Richard Doty have been known for spreading disinformation. Muchler, like other whistleblowers such as Hal Puthoff, Christopher Mellon, and Luis Elizondo and David Grush, is linked to military intelligence, which invites skepticism. Muchler's story also has inconsistencies. He claims an underground nuclear test occurred on May 22, 1992. But the test was in fact reported in October 1992, which raises questions about his timeline. Additionally, the details on Linda Moulton Howe's website have changed over time, with discrepancies like a supposed UN report on the test that never existed. There was a significant earthquake in Egypt in October 1992, which might be confusingly linked to Muchler's account. This earthquake was the strongest ever recorded in the region, causing considerable damage and drawing global attention, but there was no nuclear test associated with it. Lee Pearson and his son Bruce provide their accounts without physical evidence, relying solely on their testimony. The same goes for Marty Johnson. While their stories are intriguing, they lack corroborating physical proof. Remote viewers such as Pat Price are another point of contention. I believe Pat Price did see something under Mount Hayes, and he may have been killed because of it. Linda Moulton Howe, a well-known figure in the UFO and paranormal research, has a strong track record, but also has a tendency to focus on stories she already believes in. While she conducts thorough investigations, she approaches each case with a belief that may influence her findings. Many researchers in the UFO field operate similarly. In my approach, I start without assumptions, focusing on gathering evidence to support or debunk theories. Sometimes my perspective changes with new information, as with the hollow moon theory and crop circles. The Dark Pyramid story remains elusive. While some pieces of the puzzle fit, there's no concrete proof to validate its existence. Until such evidence emerges, I remain skeptical about the Dark Pyramid under Alaska. Now, what are your thoughts on this? Share in the comments below, and stay tuned for more content.